All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce our next two speakers. They will tell you a lot more about what they're doing during their presentation, but I've been following their work for a number of years now, and I think what they are doing is really bringing about the education revolution, or at least keeping it going and getting it started. And you know, they're really focused on democratic education and democratic education principles. And without further ado, David and Luz, over to you.
Great.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for the invitation to be part of AERO. It's a big honor to be here with all of you and with so many familiar faces. We're going to be talking today about precisely that, education revolution, and how we could support this wave of transformation to reach more people. And we have a crazy idea about how to collaborate and kind of a pilot that we could do about how to collaborate together to create a platform for scaling up, and we're gonna be sharing that with you. But mostly we want your inputs about your ideas about how to make that possible, because we just have our two minds, but if we combine all the crazy people in the call, maybe we can do something quite interesting. But as I was saying, maybe to start, so just to put a little bit about where we are at the moment and where our heads are, which has been quite intense for a while. Luz and I have been moving around the world looking for inspiring learning projects and learning about them, interviewing their founders, their facilitators, collecting lots of information about tools, researching more about it, and then creating programs and audiovisual means to share this with as many people as possible. Obviously, COVID stopped our travel plans, and we stayed for a long time, kind of researching more through a little screen. But this summer, we thought it was a good time to try again, and we decided to come to Egypt and the UK. Actually, it wasn't like that decision. Like Luz received an award for social entrepreneurship in Spain that brought us to European region, and then these were two countries where we already had a lot of friends that we wanted to meet and learn from. So maybe we share a little bit of how that has been for the last 2 or 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
No? So if you want to say a bit about Egypt.
Yeah, in Egypt, there was it's a really hard ecosystem, actually. Like homeschooling and all those things are not allowed by the government, but we found some oases in the middle of the desert that were like, wow, they are really trying super cool stuff. One of the places that we visit is called Nusaima, and it was just a women-led community that we just entered by the door, and you cannot imagine Alexandria, like millions of cars. I was actually scared of crossing the street. It was like, this is really hard. Anyways, we arrived there, and it was a real oasis where children were completely empowered. They were asking us so many different questions. They were participating. They were telling us even how they were facilitating some of the sessions with the smaller kids. And it was, I guess that the word for me that defined that place was equity and participation of all the different people in that community. It was a really safe space, and they were playing with agile learning tools and so on in order to allow that co-creation of that space. So yeah, that was beautiful. Then in Cairo, we visited another one.
Compass.
Yeah.
Compass, I guess we found it because it's kind of termed as one of the best schools of the country. It's kind of the school where diplomats take their children and things like that. And I always find amazing how you can go to the most alternative, hippiest places and to the most leadership development schools, and you find actually core principles and methodologies that are very similar to each other. And a lot has to do with youth empowerment, with child-led education, with listening to them, and then guiding them in that process of making decisions that allow them to grow, to find who they are and what things they want to do next, what things they want to learn next about, how they're going to do that, and so on. And even in this school, which had a lot of resources, they said how difficult it is to find those people with the right mindset to be able to do this, because in most cases it's not, and this is a big realization after lots of researching about education, that it's not about the resources, it's not about investing more in new furniture or things like that. It's really about the mindset of the facilitators, of the adults, and how they treat children, how they treat each other, and how good, how much they are in their own process of personal development. We're going to be talking a lot more about that.
And then, well, we arrived to, well, but by the way, don't go to Egypt in summer. It's like 47 degrees. We were going to die, but survived. Anyways, and yeah, we just like 5 days we have been in the UK visiting so many different people that we have only met by the screen, and it has been super amazing.
Yeah, like for instance, yesterday we went to the newest school in London, which is a democratic progressive school, where they have lots of elective classes. They use sociocratic decision-making circles for the children and for the staff as a way to manage themselves. And it was super cool to see as well different ways of, like, we talked with them, and then with a researcher from King's College who is has been looking a lot into democratic education. And it was a nice, like, and her name is Freya Aquarone, and she put really nicely to us 2 ways to look at democratic education. Like, many times we look at democratic education from a governance perspective, which is about how to make decisions about how the school runs, how decisions are made about the budget or the spaces, the food. But she said there was another aspect about democratic education, which is about how things work within the classroom. And within the classroom, there are a lot of things that can happen just from the way that we listen to children when they make a presentation, or when we give choices within the options about how to develop a certain project. I don't know, she put lots of different examples. And the thing I loved about that is that many of those examples are accessible to nearly every learning space, to a lot of mainstream education settings, lots of conventional schools. In many cases, the teachers will have access to these different methodologies that empower children to take responsibility for their learning and develop essential life skills. So that was really inspiring to see how they were putting it into practice in this progressive democratic school that also uses sociocracy and all these things. That it felt that it was almost the easy thing to describe, because that's very different from the typical hierarchical perspective. The harder things to describe are the things that educators do on a day-to-day basis on their classes and in connection with their students.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, and the other, we have visit also Rosina Dorelli, that she has been working in Da Vinci Life Skills, and she has created, I mean, the work that she has done is amazing, trying to figure out a curriculum that can make easier for schools to start introducing that self-directed learning into that spaces. She included the 20% project that Derry and Jacob have been promoting also. That means that the kids are going to have like 20% of their time to actually do that self-direction. And then there are a lot of different things about, they didn't have subjects per se, which I mean, I kind of really like the idea, because we kind of divide all the reality into particular subjects, but everything is connected. So she was able to create like different project pathways in which the kids can work, following questions and then experiencing and doing it by themselves. So that was really, really insightful too.
I'm going to share over here in the chat. We're going to be sharing a few things. But to start with our Instagram, in case you want to follow this action research that we're doing, or live research we're doing at the moment, we don't research in the conventional way of publishing papers afterwards and then keep them on a box, but rather by sharing as much as we can through social media and through different means. So that's a way to connect with us.
And that's why we were going to challenge there in terms of that sentence of the education revolution. I think it has already happened. There is so many.
Do you want me to share a screen, or do you want to start straight away?
Yeah, if you want to share a screen, it's good.
Okay. So yeah, let me. So we. Oh, sorry.
I can start talking. So the education revolution has already happened. There are many different learning centers, education pioneers that are showing how different ways of educating is possible. And those are many examples of inspiration that many people can start taking and doing experiments to see how that can work in their learning environments. And I think something that is really important to be aware is that there is not a single solution that is going to work for everyone. So far, maybe we can say that that solution is the traditional educational assistant that we have today, and that has been the mainstream, but there are many streams, and that is beautiful. The diversity that we have found along the way, it's amazing, and I think that it's something that we have to like protect. So there are many people that have asked us, what is the best thing that we can do? And I think that it's really frustrating sometimes to accept that there is not one solution, but at the same time, how fantastic is that? That there are many possibilities, and each person and each group of people have to find what it works inside their environments. And also there are so many different networks that have emerged to contact and connect all these different people around the world that are doing super amazing things. So it's those are, I guess, the pioneers, the ones that are starting, but there are many people that is getting excited about this thing, and maybe they haven't changed their school and it's a democratic school, but they are implementing choice inside their classes, and that is something that is going to build up little by little. So yeah, as David was saying, we have been researching and democratizing those educational practices and the mindset to make it possible. How? Just with the camera interviewing more than 150 pioneers of possibilities from 17 different nationalities, and asking them, how do you do it? How do you make this possible? Give me examples, and really focus on the how.
Yeah, I think we're very aligned on the why it makes sense to change things, and even some of the values, but we always struggle with how to make these things happen.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like the how, there are many hows. So each person has to take their own decisions and decide what they want to do. So what we have been doing many different things, but we have been sharing and democratizing this knowledge through documentary films, webinars, and experiential trainings to increase that awareness, to also open conversations and start reflecting about the things that we do and what things we would like to change in our environments. And I would like to give you some more examples, a little bit more in depth than the ones that we have shared from the trip the last 2 weeks. One of them that it blew my mind, and it's super cool. It comes from Javier. He is a teacher that is working for this. Well, he's a public teacher, a public school teacher in Spain, and he's working inside, or he joined the movement of Teachers for Future Spain, and he is supporting the class that has called, the class has called itself the class that is gonna change the world. They set up like a bar super high, but yeah, that's the mindset that they have. And he started organizing class meetings where the children have a little bit of choice of the things, the projects that they want to work on, and they work on that framework of project-based learning. One of the projects that they started was actually about class zero residues. And they were realizing that there were many plastics that were coming, or that they were throwing to the bin. So they were like, wait 1 second, what can we do about this? And why is this a problem? So they started doing an experiment. The first thing that they did was like, okay, let's go all to the recess, but don't throw anything to the bin, and let's keep that, bring it back and see what are the residues that we are producing. So they analyzed the different things, and they were, oh, okay, there is organic residues. Maybe we can do a compost in the school, and then we can start that and sharing that with other classes. So they did that. The other thing that they found were many plastic bottles and wrappings of all the different pastries and so on. So they were like, well, with the plastic bottles, there is also an easy solution that we can do here. We can use the refillable ones. And then they were a little bit more creating awareness through the rest of the school to tell them, hey, you know, do you want to try this? They started their own even businesses to sell those bottles. And then the other thing that they found was plastics that single-use plastics. And they were like, wait, there's not an easy way to escape this one. What can we do? And they were saying, well, actually the pastries maybe is not something so healthy to eat. So they were doing experiments, see what worked for them, and choosing how did they want to act on those different aspects. Another project that they were doing, it was called Blood Funds, and they just watched a documentary movie about coltan and realized how crazy the situation was. It shocked them. They were like, this cannot be. and they didn't stay quiet. They started creating an awareness campaign and decided to pick up or try to make people to bring their phone, the old phones that are in a drawer forgotten, to recycle them. And then, because you could get like the enough coltan to make one cell phone from 2 old cell phones. So they were trying to create all that awareness campaigns to do that. And I really like one thing that Javier was saying all the time is awareness with compromise. So if there is this knowledge, but we don't use it, and it doesn't create any action, just compliance, that doesn't make change happen. And they were working on that. There's this awareness, this knowledge that we have, and we need to do something about it, and we need that action to happen. The other example that we would like to share is it comes from Colombia, and this is Angela and Gustavo. They have created an after-school program based on theater and drama. And they saw one of the sentences that Gustavo said, that it was like, it shook me a little bit. It was like, all the human aspects inside the class are forgotten. I just have to teach them this content, and it doesn't really mind who I have in front. And he said, I want to create a space where they are the protagonists, and I want them to own the space and to live in that space. So through theater and through improvisation, they started working with the feelings and emotions, and they saw how the kids were getting every time more comfortable. They were even talking about things as happiness. It's like, what does it mean to be happy? And am I only gonna be happy when I reach my goals, or can I be happy while I'm getting them? I don't know, those are really spaces where children can have a voice and they can start being in responsibility of their own learning and their own lives. And it's really important, even though it's not inside the class and we might not qualify as like a revolutionary event, it is changing the mindsets of many people.
And it's very important for them. And just to put that a bit more in context, Gustavo and what was her name again? Angela. They are teachers in a vulnerable neighborhood in a public school in Bogota, in the outskirts of Bogota. So with lots of challenges, they found things that they could not change within their classrooms, that they decided to create another space that enabled the youth to change their relationship with their school and start feeling like it was their school, to make the most out of it, and also to work with the rest of the other children. And there were lots of children that came from migrants families, children with a family that were in jail, in lots of different conditions, and suddenly they had a space now to express themselves through theater.
And I think also these things permeate in the school. Like once that they lived that, they were like, I couldn't keep teaching the same way. I cannot ignore that I have a full human being in front of me. So they change completely their perspective, and those seeds start flourishing, and many other people start doing things in a different way. And the other example is like completely different. Maybe you have heard about them. It comes from India, and this is Project Defy, which means design education for yourself. Abjit, who is the one that started this, I'm gonna call it movement, because it has spread in many places around the world.
In Africa, as you will see in the picture.
Yeah, so he created nooks, which is a space with materials and tools, and there's no teachers, and it's open to the whole community. So everybody can go there and start. What happened actually at the beginning is that children went there and it's like, what is this? And they started playing, but then some interest started coming around, and then they started doing their own projects, and they were like, actually, I don't know how to do this thing. Maybe I can tell this other person I know in the community that does know how to do it. So they were bringing the adults and the elders. So they started creating a community in which people started working on their own interests. They also have kind of an onboarding process to choose a project and to set up their own goals. And another thing that I think is super cool is that they also have tools in order to change the culture of the community. They have a say. They can decide what things they would like to, they didn't like it so much and they would like to change. And that opens a conversation that we don't have in our society right now. They have that opportunity to shape that space. And these three examples can give us a lot of inspiration on how to put in practice three core elements of motivation, as the theory of self-determination says, no? Autonomy, competence with the class that is going to change the world, and relatedness, creating those communities and feeling that you belong. And they are three completely different examples, completely different approaches of how they view learning.
Even different continents, like we've got here, Europe, Asia, Latin America.
But I think that many of the, like the way or the ideal that they are chasing is towards us learner-centered education. And I think that we generally can agree that education needs to take that direction, but the way it would look like it's going to be different, many different, and it's going to vary a lot depending on the situation. So we are really fascinated about collecting all these possibilities and supporting people to do those small experiments, probably fail a lot, and then try to see what works inside their communities. And I know that they are really different examples. And I know I said that there is not like a solution, but there are some things that we have found in common in all these learning spaces, and maybe they are a little bit more abstract, and as David was saying, it's kind of more of a mindset of a way of seeing life. But one thing that really surprised me every time I enter in these learning spaces is that it's a safe space. I arrive there and like the work can be ending outside, but it's a safe space where children have a voice and it is heard. They can participate. They own that space. They create their own communities and learn how to co-live and interact with each other. But they are also brave spaces, because there is a lot of things going on, and maybe sometimes there are things that we don't like so much, and we need to go out of our comfort zone, or maybe someone actually challenges us, and in that it kind of pushes a little bit of that comfort zone and goes to that stretch zone where growth happens. I think other super important thing is that mistakes are allowed. That it's common. I mean, it's what happens through that learning process. We make mistakes and learn a lot from them. And one like things that we did not see in those spaces is judgments, punishments. There was not this comparison between kids. There was no competition, and there were safe spaces where there were no expectations of how you should be. You could be yourself. You could develop as the human being that you want to be. Another thing that is there in all these spaces is that the relationship is the most important thing. Like, there's not this separation between the students and the teachers. Our relationship, the way we relate to each other is super important. And those are really healthy relationships based on trust, where the facilitators really care about the person that they have in front. They are really curious and they are trying to figure out who is that human. So sincere communication is happening all the time, asking questions from curiosity, listening actively to that person. And the other thing that we saw, I mean, this we didn't see, but we feel it, and it's that mindset of the facilitators. And I'm going to mention three core things I feel they are really important. And I think that facilitators need to be humble. Saying I don't know everything is like a super powerful experience, because you show how you are in your own learning process. I don't know this thing, but maybe let's try to figure out together. So you become a co-learner with them, and knowing also that every person that is in the room has their own experiences and their own knowledge, and that we can learn from each other. And that builds a vibrant learning community where everybody is sharing and learning from each other. The second thing is vulnerable. You need to be vulnerable. You need to say how you feel, the mistakes that you make. And that's actually super powerful, because you're saying, oh, you know what happened last week? I did this thing and it wasn't right. And that way you are role modeling actually how that learning process happened, and you're sharing your mistakes and the way you feel, and the kids then are gonna, you're giving them the space for children to know that that is possible and that they can also make mistakes and that we are not perfect and that we are learning all the time. And then the other thing, which is, I guess that the hidden one, or I find the most difficult one to understand and maybe to see, and is coherence. It is not cool if I tell to a kid, oh, don't take sugar, and then I'm drinking a Coca-Cola. Wait 1 second. So we need to be coherent with the things that we think, say, and do. If not, there is a mismatch that they don't understand, and I mean, you are not really living what you are saying, so that's not cool. So we need to be role models, and that role model is also about, I am learning, I am making mistakes, I'm not perfect, but you are that role model of all those different things. And one way that we learn is imitation. So those values are being caught, not taught. So I think that also as a facilitator, we need to love learning, to show how we are passionate about whatever thing, and then the kids see, and then they absorb that really easily because they can see who a passionate person looks like, and then they are gonna start doing their own things. So that, as David was saying, many tools, you can find them online. It's the information is there, but the real challenge is to change the mindset from a hierarchical mindset to an horizontal one, and from a control perspective to passing the responsibility of the learning to the learners. And maybe you can share now.
I'll go back to share screen.
Yeah.
And just to share one more little resource on the chat. So one of the things of the ways in which we have tried to share this information is by writing things. So for instance, we have an ebook that is called Questioning Education, and let's just paste it on the chat, the link, in case you want to have a look at it. There are more questions perhaps than solutions, but lots of interesting perspectives that can be valuable for some of you. And Luz have mentioned lots of amazing things about the good news, that there are already amazing learning spaces all around the world, and that they work. They are working already, they are inspiring, they are creating toolkits, sharing what they're doing. It's really valuable, but that's not the full picture, right? There are some things that maybe could be done better, and that's the bad news that I'm gonna share now. And the bad news, and maybe this is what Jerry was referring to at the beginning, is that the huge majority of children and youth still don't have access to learner-centered education. And I mean, most people, most adults have never seen or experienced a different way of learning or teaching away from the industrial model of education that has spread around the world. And that makes it super difficult for many of these progressive pedagogies and tools to actually being implemented. Even when they are transferred through government programs or so on, as here is the tool, here is the dynamic that you use to do an assembly or to do a circle, because this mindset haven't been really integrated, so it's not a safe space. You don't feel like you can express anything. You feel like you're being judged, you're being evaluated, and therefore none of the amazing capacities and skills that we see children developing in the progressive spaces happen in conventional scenarios as easily. And another key element is that we're in a moment where this is more needed than ever, perhaps, or at least in the history that we can see, because it's absolutely obvious to, I think, more and more people. If I was going to say everyone, but you can never say everyone. So it's obvious to a large fraction of the society that we need to adapt to new challenges of employment, mental health, and social and natural regeneration. The automation of jobs is not a prediction, it's something that we are seeing right now. For instance, copywriter was a job that was being sold just 3 years ago, I think, as one of the most sought after professions. There were lots of online programs, become a copywriter. And right now, because of ChatGPT and AI, we know that it's a lot easier to automate, just create text about anything that you want to. So that's just to pick one example. Mental health, we know that's a really increasing problem, not just because of education, because of how cities work, technology, lots of other factors, but education definitely can be a pillar to deal with this. And finally, about climate change is not about talking whether it's going to happen or not, but how are we going to deal with the consequences of climate change, because there doesn't seem to be the policies or the actions that actually are going to take us in a different direction. And this is making that a lot of international organizations agree actually on the change of direction. And this is something very encouraging for me, because when society is aware of the problems, and we are more and more of us thinking that it makes sense to move in a different way, and that way every time is more consolidated and there's more people that agree, it's becoming more and more possible. For instance, UNESCO, in their framework of future competencies, they set up as #1 competence for the future lifelong learning, very closely followed by self-agency. I mean, these are really talking about principles that have been part of many progressive learning spaces since a while ago, but now they're saying this is core for any education space. The same that the LifeCom framework of the European Union, and the last one is a report that I read recently from a group of entrepreneurs within the Catalyst 2030 framework to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. And when they look at how education needs to change to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, was their top recommendation: learner-centric models and learner-led approaches. So we are all kind of aiming and working in the same direction, and this is really encouraging. However, there's a big challenge here. It's a massive social problem. Social things are way harder to change, I think, than technological things or other aspects of society. So it's really hard for anyone to do it alone, and there needs to be a really strong alliance between lots of people with an open mindset to experimentation, continuous improvement, and humbleness to make this possible. And I think this is particularly challenging in education, because for many of the pioneers in this space, many of the people that are doing things differently, meant going against the current, meant becoming very stubborn to actually be able to do things that is not generally accepted by a society and no one else is doing around you. So it becomes harder to then being open to trust other people, because there's been many occasions where you haven't been understood. And where you didn't feel like you could express yourself. I used to work in alliance management and in creation of collaborative partnerships in healthcare for the development of treatments, particularly for cancer. Really complicated field as well. No one understands the human body. No one understands disease fully. So everyone knows, and no one can really develop a medicine, a treatment on their own, not even big organizations. So the big corporations know that the small biotechs are quicker at doing experiments. The academics know that they cannot run large randomized clinical trials to test whether their treatments work in the population. So everyone, in a way, people are aware that no one can work alone. And that's why there's a lot of emphasis on collaboration. And I used to be in one of those teams setting up and managing those collaborations. But through that process, one thing that I can draw from it is that while collaborations are complicated, while they bring together different perspectives, they are possible. And there are a lot of frameworks for collaborations that we can learn from. There are a lot of things that can be implemented and taken from other fields into education. I took this couple of images to remind me to talk about a couple of things. Let me see if I remember what they were. Okay, yes. So the ladder of influence was to talk that about the fact that no one really sees reality, and this is particularly in every space. The ladder of influence is just a model by a Harvard professor that where it tries to explain how, even if it's a real world, no one actually is able to access it, because every time we see anything, we're selecting pieces of information that match with, so selecting data that I can observe, that I can understand, I add meaning to it, I make assumptions based on those meanings, I draw my own conclusions, and I adopt certain types of beliefs around the world that I live in. And the more this happens and the more we grow up, the more beliefs that we have that affect affect our reflective system and how we select those pieces of information and understand it. So this makes that when we come to collaboration with different perspectives, it becomes very hard to understand each other's point of view. But it's not impossible. And there are different tools that can be used, both at the personal level, such as active listening, of course, but also facilitating those meetings and coordinating those environments so that we can reach agreements. We don't need to think exactly the same. We just need to reach agreements to be able to move forwards. And this is possible. It's happening in all other spaces. So it definitely can also happen in education. The other image that is here was to remind me to talk about the kind of the science or the psychology of team building. And this is from the results of a study that Google did to understand how to create effective teams. One of the nice conclusions I like is that it doesn't really matter who is on the team, but how the team work together. That was way more relevant in their study, at least, about the performance of those teams. And the top priority that they found was that psychological safety, the fact that team members felt that they could take risks and not being judged, and they could make mistakes, and so on. And this has to do a lot with having a beginner's mindset, which is kind of, we have been 4 years now working in this space, but we keep on saying we are not the experts. We research about the experts, and we try to develop great mechanisms to share what the experts know, but we're not the experts. And that beginner mindset, I believe it's something super important to be able to listen to other people, because you know that there are other perspectives, and to reach these sort of agreements and to work together as a team. Another key point is clarity, and that's the third point about the structure and clarity. And there are many possible ways in which we can work together to scale the education revolution. We can aim at changing policies. We can do activism to bring awareness to the wider population. We can support the creation of new alternative schools. There are many different things. And we have a specific scope that I would like to share with you, that is to be co-created. So there's a lot of space for how to make this happen with the people and anyone that's interested to join us. But I would like to create a little bit of clarity about how we feel that we can contribute to this big problem. And this is kind of the title of this slide. So we want to create a platform to support teams of education change makers to develop experiments that lead to the transformation of their learning spaces. There's a lot in here. So let me break it down. So on one hand, I think that we all know that in any school that you go to, you're going to find a small group of vocational educators that are really passionate about what they do, and they really want to do things different, but they feel isolated. They are stressed, they are tired, they feel unrecognized for their work. There are also many people that are creating their own learning spaces, and actually the feeling and the situation is pretty similar. They also feel isolated, they also feel a bit lost about how to go about it. So I believe that we need to create an ecosystem, a support mechanism, a platform, just to use one term, to support these people to make possible those things. And those things are not about implementing, in our view, a specific curriculum or a specific methodology, but about inspiring them and providing them with the tools so that they develop experiments and they find what works in their context, for their community, and with the restrictions that there are in their environments. Part of that experimentation process is that no one wants to be saved. People need to be the heroes of their own stories. So we can provide with all these resources and inspiration and support community, but their actions are on their hands. And this is actually something that has worked for other people to lead social changes. For instance, Ashoka, and I will talk a little bit about them later. But the point is that, and that's the sentence that is in italics at the bottom, that while writing might have been invented a few times in history, I think 4 or so it's believed, all other written languages are resulted from experiments of people that saw writing and thought, I want something like that for my own language. So this can also happen in education. We can provide that inspiration and support mechanisms so that people find their own language about how improve their learning spaces. And we can learn a lot from the things that work to make this happen. So for instance, in terms of changing the culture of a space or changing the way things work, there are different models for change management. This is one of those, which is a lot about creating that small coalition of people that are working together and being able to communicate very clearly the vision, taking action quickly, celebrate the wins. There are some models that can be learned from other industries, from other contexts to support in scaling up education and the education revolution. And three very powerful tools that more and more organizations are taking in are design thinking, lean startup, and agile. This is mostly coming from the world of startups and entrepreneurship, where people have been looking for a long time how to be successful being an entrepreneur. The success rate is so small. It's like 5%, I think it is. And the more that people look into it, the more they find that there's not a single solution. The only thing that we can be certain about is about the need to experiment. Try things, learn from them, refine what you're doing, and try another thing. And these are three different frameworks that enable kind of a structured process to develop experiments, learning from them, and keep on doing it better and better every time. And this can also be used in education. We actually use design thinking in one of our training programs, but this is just the mindset that we would like to bring to this collaboration. And let me share about the example of Ashoka in specific. So Ashoka Universities has been working with universities to promote social innovation. So Ashoka is an organization that recognizes social entrepreneurship. They give awards to social entrepreneurs. And when they look at, okay, so how can we support the development of more social entrepreneurs at university? So they developed this program where they find a few people connected with these values and vision in each of the universities, and then they provide them with the support ecosystem, the resources, the community, so that within each of their universities, they start creating that change. We went to a congress about a month and a half ago, yeah, in Guadalajara, in Mexico. Where different universities from Latin America were presenting what they're actually doing. And there was a lot of diversity. Some people were doing challenges about social or environmental challenges. Some other people were working with local communities. Some other people were doing project-based learning focused on social innovation for the different degrees, even if it was accounting or whatever it was. So there were different ways in which each of those universities had found a way to integrate social innovation into the way that they work. And that was quite inspirational for us in the sense of, okay, so this is actually nice. It's creating that ecosystem and allowing them to find what works for each of them. Some more examples that are more close to us. So these are some recent ones. We just finished a training that we have that is called the Learning Expedition. It's a 3-month program where we support educators to develop these experiments and learn and so on. And we just received some emails at the end of the program, kind of gratitude emails that we didn't ask for. And this is amazing. I wanted to bring it here. So the first one is from Teresa, and she's a teacher in a high school in a public school in the north of Peru. She was already using circles in her classroom, so she was thinking about progressive education, but using our resources, she was able to convince the school principal to implement school parliaments. And now there are other 8 teachers that are using school circles in their classes. The second one is from India, who run this program in Spanish and English. And this is from Garima, who is a school principal in a primary school. And she said that from this year, I will make our school partially a democratic school. There will be only 2 compulsory lessons. And this is going to be an experiment for me and my team for the rest of the year. And, you know, this really makes me quite emotional, because this is what we have been aiming for all this time. is to see whether this impact is possible, whether inspiring people and supporting them unconditionally can allow them in their own spaces to create this change. And the last one is from a more progressive primary school, actually the new school that we visited yesterday. One of their facilitators trained with us, and she was also scaling back her plan and prepare lessons and allowing more options for children inquiry and question-based learning. So quite interesting, just evidences that the change is possible within different scenarios, public schools, progressive schools in different countries. I added over there the final projects just to remind me that they're sending their final projects with a kind of final reflection of their impact that they had in their organizations, and we'll be sharing that online. So connect with us if you if you would like to know about that. And oh yeah, and if you want Luz to share over here the link somewhere about the learning expedition, in case anyone wants to have a look at it. This is our 3-month program focused on personal development, understanding the keys for motivation and meaningful learning, and how to transfer the responsibility of learning from the educators to the learners. And the way that we go about that is kind of, we have been reinforcing this all the way along the presentation. We explore what works in some of the most progressive spaces, experience that firsthand in the way that we manage the learning community and by doing experiment in your context, and finally have a safe space where you can express yourself, your challenges, and support each other. So that's what Luz and I have been able to do, our two little never stopping brains. We're just two people. There's a lot of limitations on our possibilities and our imagination about what's possible. We have been researching about, so this is the innovation distribution curve, how we can scale innovation. We learn from innovators and share that with early adopters. And we can do that quite effectively, we found, and quite cheaply through digital means, globally even. But there's a big chasm there about how to jump to a larger volume of people who are those early majority that are interested. There seems to be something happening there in education. There seems to be all these reports, all these people talking about learner-centered education, about lifelong learning, about essential life skills, but they don't know exactly how to go about it. And particularly for people who are working in public schools, it's a big challenge. Like the sample of Teresa that I just mentioned, she told us at the end of the training, guys, I need to keep in contact. This is not easy, even though I'm doing it. It's not enough just with training. Or the same with, I don't remember now her name, but anyway, there was a teacher that was creating her own school, an alternative learning center in the US, and she was in the same situation. She knew the tools, she now felt more confident, but actually to make a school run and work, it's a long process. So for all these people, we would like to create this ecosystem, this way to collaborate with each other, to support them on a longer journey to transform their learning spaces and become kind of the seeds of change in each of the spaces that they are. So here comes my question to interact a little bit with you and to learn from each other. And it's what will make such a platform to scale learner-centered education possible? So we are really keen on learning from your ideas, your imagination about how do you think, what elements will be necessary to have in this platform so that we can really support people to lead this change in their own context and spaces. If we can have maybe some room time, maybe something like 3 or 4 people per room. I think William is the one that can help us right now. Lucy's gonna copy the question in the chat.
We don't have the powers to create the rooms.
We do, I don't know.
No.
Okay, we don't. So yeah, William, if you can give us a hand to create rooms so that we can speak with each other and have a bit of time. Maybe we can set up, given that is so we have 40
Wait,
minutes.
maybe William is not here.
Oh, maybe he's not here.
Well,
maybe we can leave the question open and then everyone can answer on their own time. So feel free to unmute yourself, open conversation. What will make such a platform possible? We really want your ideas, and thoughts, experiences.
Hello, guys. I'm sorry my video is not on, but I am here and I am listening and I am watching.
Awesome.
It's inspiring and emotional to watch how and listen to the journey that you've been on. Like you say, you're just two people, but you're two amazing people that are doing amazing things, really, really having an effect in changing the world. And even as small as the seeds are, you know, big things start off small and grow big. So thank you for what you do. I'm very inspired and emotional with you too. I don't have any brainy ideas. I just wanted to say hello, but I'm going to get thinking and listen to the ideas.
Thank you, Sari. Thank you. It's great that you broke the silence. That will help everyone else to jump in.
I have a question for you. Thank you, by the way, for the presentation. It was really great. It's kind of, I think, related to your question of how to build this platform. And I'm kind of not exactly sure if you mean platform as in, I always think software when I hear that word. So we're not talking software, right? We're talking kind of like the mechanism by which you're going to deliver this. Is that
yes.
Okay. I have a question for you about your research and how to disseminate that. And I'm asking this as a student in academia. And so what I'm really interested in is like big level, like I'm like, how are we ever going to affect policy? And I'm very discouraged about that at this point of my learning journey. I don't know how possible that is, but what I see having some impact is when, you know, academics and other people can like draw on research to influence decision makers. But the only research that we can draw on in those realms is the, you know, peer reviewed in all these journals. And of course, that's all like subject to all kinds of questions. Basically, okay, so it's cut two questions. Where do you see your research having an impact? Like, who is it reaching? Because they're open to your methods. You know, they're like, oh, they're not, you know, they're not using it's not like peer reviewed journal stuff. So who? And then maybe this is a crowdsourcing question, like, how can we, is there a way that those of us who are in more academic environments can draw on that and can pull from that? I don't know. Like, so maybe, yeah, those are my questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Renee. We have met with some researchers yesterday from King's College London that they have been doing maybe some similar things than us, taking a group of people that are doing different things and then trying to identify what methods and so on and publishing them. What I will say is that and they publish them and that's kind of possible, I believe. What I will say is that we have been asked several times, why don't you do a PhD with this or so on? We're not so interested in to get into that academic space, but we are very open to share what we have with anyone that wants to use it. So we've got hours and hours and endless hours of interviews with people explaining how they do things different in their learning spaces that can be a really valuable, I think, source material for a lot of academic research. And we're definitely up for collaborations to share that, to use it to write peer review papers and so on. And if anyone wants to has any other idea, because you said it was a crowdsourced question, so if anyone wants to add more. Sydney?
Hello, David and Luz. So good to
Hi.
see you. I'm just involved in a project which is trying to collect the research about graduates of democratic self-educated programs, because I think that will go a long way to convincing people that it's not such a big risk to have their children engage in those practices. And I think an example of that is the research that Peter Gray and Gina Riley have done, and which has been published in places like Carlo Ricci's journal in Canada. So I think there is a precedent for that kind of academic research, but I think it needs to be increased and fueled by the experiences of the people that you run into. So I would urge you, whenever you have an opportunity to discover kids who have been through the experience and benefited from it, to kind of point those experiences towards somebody who can put it into a so-called academic format. And I'm not sure that's what changes policy anyway. You know, I think you have politicians who make policy without even looking at the research.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because
but,
the richer do say other things, but
yeah, hopefully Peter Gray will have more to say that later on in the conference. But thanks for all you do.
Thank you. We had a comment over there from Samantha about working with universities for, I imagine, for teacher training programs and teacher leadership programs. We're 100% up for that. We still haven't found a way how to do it. We have spent a good amount of time on the phone with different universities. Some more receptive, some less, many were in their own processes and with their own projects. But yeah, we keep trying to do that.
yeah. Ariel?
Thank you. I had a call a week ago with Richard, who should be around in the physical meeting. And Richard, as you know, you're also in contact with him. He's with Peter Bergson together. Sydney was around also, trying to like create some kind of group, some kind of movement, joining people together and to really, yeah, get us together and work for this goal. And I think, and this is what I wanted to say, I think we have to be very conscious and very clear about what our goal is, because I think we have to realize that what many of us maybe in a first step intend to do is to create the possibilities to break out of the conventional educational schooling, which is great, and to have this freedom. But what we see there is that we still have like, you say it, niche in English, a niche, little niche solution, which is of course beautiful and great. And myself, we run a school, a democratic school in nature, and this is an incredible experience. And so this little pearls around the globe, of course, is so valuable, but there's still like less than 1% of the mass, which is daily, on a daily base, abused, let's say, in institutionalized education centers. So I think we have to, if we really want to change the situation in a big scale, I think we have to really become conscious that our aim needs to be to really reach public educational policies. Because of course, it's a first beautiful little step to create these little pearls. Obviously amazing. I've been part of them. It's so incredible, and we have many beautiful stories to tell. But if we really want to change the situation, I think we have to aim really and define this. And then it becomes tricky, because then how to really implement that. And I've been collaborating here in Europe with universities, and they all say yes, yes, yes. And as you showed, even the European Council and UNESCO and all the theory, all the standard, like student-centered learning, it's there, but it hasn't reached like the political. I mean, here in Spain, for example, if I may share, you maybe know even better than me, more than 1 year now, we have a new educational law, which goes into that direction of student-centered learning and competence-centered curriculum and stuff like this, but is still far away, also because many teachers oppose to these changes. So even having new laws, which is really an interesting situation here in Spain, even having a new law, which is pretty good, but it is still very far away. So I wonder really what is the strategy, what is the action plan we need to develop. I don't know if we have to take a legal fight, which is very expensive, to take this kind of lawyers to really say, okay, we're going to sue the state because they're doing institutionalized mistreatment or abuse of the children, and we know better now. So why do they continue doing this? So we're going to go for them and sue them. I don't know, but therefore we would need like 50,000 euro at least, or even more. And who's going to bring this up? So, well, I wonder then what the strategy is, because of course we have to think step by step, and starting with this little, how Derry Hannem says, pioneers of possibilities. So they are very important to open up the way to create this new realities. But looking at the global situation right now, we really have to hurry up if it's not too late already. And I hope you also, because I know you are also into this, like the important to link educational alternatives also to lifestyle alternatives like eco-villages. So maybe I think this is something also very important to mention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriel. And yeah, I mean that legal fight, as you said, it's a hard one. It's a needed one, I think. And there are some people that are, like yourself, that are coming together in this direction. Our perspective is that we need many different, I mean, this is not going to be one single alliance or a single approach that is going to work. It's probably it's already happening. Like probably things are way better than they were 30 years ago. I think it's already happening, and it will keep on happening through many different approaches and many different ways. The approach to collaborate that we are suggesting, and I know that Richard is creating this movement, and it's about how to bring awareness, I believe, to the wider population, and like there's a lot of movements, and I love that. I think that's fantastic. I think we need more collaboration. The way that we see ourselves contributed to it and want to collaborate with other people is to support those teams of education change makers, either to transform their own schools or to create new learning spaces, and how to provide them with the support ecosystem so they can go and do that. And I believe that policies are going to keep on changing, but that people can do things in their classes and in their schools way more flexible than we believe. And we have studied both, not just alternative educational scenarios. We have been in tons of public schools in lots of different places, like I mentioned before, Colombia, but also in Spain. And we're always amazed when we arrive and see that they don't have subjects but workshops, that they do real life projects that are connected with environmental activism, that, like the Teachers for Future Spain example that Luz was putting. So when people want and feel supported and feel recognized for their work, they do a lot of amazing stuff, and that's the avenue that we are taking.
Yeah, I cannot feel like it's exactly what you said. Now the government in Spain has particularly left a space, a free subject where teachers can do whatever they want, and teachers are like, oh my god. So okay, now we are that law is allowing a little bit of freedom, but then they don't know what to do with that freedom. They have never experienced any other way of doing things. And now, even if they were asking for that freedom, it comes as an imposition. So now I don't want it. It's like, what? So I really need that those people that are doing things, that are willing to, that are curious, that are starting to do things in a different way, need that support to inspire others, but next to them. And I think that it has to come from those little whole pockets of people that are keen on doing things. I understand that the policy approach is another one and it's necessary, but that is one way, and then we need the other way, like many different ways.
Network itself does not require password.
Right.
Yeah.
It's redirected to a web portal where you then log in, and this doesn't have a web browser on it. And then keep the web browser on and like try to go to a website which would redirect.
I don't think that we can see it silence.
Okay.
Okay, so
you have your
We're gonna have to use a
hand
hotspot.
raised.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. Let's let's see. Is your hotspot on?
We can hear you over here,
Hey.
Peter, in case you.
Because I
you
tried to
can hear
connect to mine and it wouldn't do it.
But he cannot hear us.
us.
Which one is yours?
Okay, maybe let's write him a message.
Sorry. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Now we can. Now you can hear us. We've been
Yeah.
hearing you before.
Yeah, sorry. So you've talked a lot about how the education revolution is happening. And I think that's great. I think that you're really onto something here. What do you see as, so it's happening, what do you see as the next stage? Like what, so like you're doing a lot and you see that there's a lot of movement and a lot of people are, I guess, having their eyes open to these ideas and they're starting to implement them and more people are getting more comfortable. What do you see now as the next stage to kind of really put it over the hump, so to speak?
I feel like a type of movement that is gaining lots of traction, maybe driven by a different driver than the one that maybe move us, but it's employability and it's about life skills, things like creativity, critical thinking, collaboration. All of those, or many of these skills are very present in progressive learning spaces. And now I think society at large agrees, and many learning spaces want to make those skills a key part of their curriculums and the way that they teach. So I think that focus on skill development above content learning, it's going to help take a bigger step in this direction. I don't know if it helps.
Yeah, that did. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, we need to, there needs to be a lot of different approaches from many different streams in order to make that change happening. And yeah, I think that if we go to teachers as an imposition, that's not going to create the change. So that's why that inspiration, I feel that it can at least change little environments, and that way, and that's going to create more interest for more people. And there is no awareness really. Like if we talk about how many people know about these things, it's not that many because there is not the awareness created.
And now that you say that, I think something important and that we all have here like a shared responsibility is about how to share these things. Most teachers, even families that I speak with, depending on how you say the things, they can feel completely threatened and under attack, because it feels as if we are pointing to them as the cause of all evils on planet, rather than parts of the victims of the same system. So I think one of the challenging things is that once we step out of conventional education, explore other ways of doing things, then to communicate them, we need a lot of working on how to communicate that effectively, how to share these things so that they are received as I'm here supporting you in your development to create an amazing learning space, rather than and avoiding people feeling under attack.
Yeah, that mindset of I'm fixing you versus I'm here. Maybe, yeah, it was using less threatening words and sharing, using a language that resonates with them, because at the end, everybody wants the best for children. So, but then that might look different depending on the person. But then if we focus on those particular things that seem that resonate with many, like the employability of emotional development and being emotionally healthy, those things are the subjects that we can use in order to start having that conversation with more people, and that way having that conversation. Because we have seen how people completely polarize once that you mention a forbidden word, and we are worrying about the same things, and we probably agree on many things, but then that is a debate, not a dialogue. There is not, no one is willing to leave anything. So I think that we need to carefully communicate in a way that we can portray to the audience that might be a little bit less receptive. And you wanted to, yeah, Tarin. So
I just wanted to add, I think it's very important to realize that, as you say, David, there isn't going to be one answer. The world is a big place and there's lots of people in it. And at the moment, there are systems which contain children in a certain way, and there's not going to be one answer coming from one place, from one group of people. But I think what you guys are doing, which is such an important one, is educating the educators, because it's all very well putting this out there in the public you know, social media for exposure to irregular people. And then it's another thing to make PhDs out of it and academia for people to read up on. But it's a totally other thing, as you say, non-aggressively approaching educators, which in reality there's one, say to, depending on where you are in the world, between 10 and 30 children in ratio of how many there are. So in approaching the way the educators are approaching their educational spaces, it does make a huge difference, much more than independently that you could do single-handedly. Am I making sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just think it's a very powerful one of those solutions to approach the educators that are in charge of the actual children, because when they see that kids, you know, will actually flourish doing this, and as time goes on and the more you research and the more it comes out, I think educators will feel much more empowered and comfortable to try something new.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like also we are asking for that for the kids. Like when we talk about self-direction, we want them to try, to explore, to learn, and to have that freedom. And then teachers need also that freedom in order to, and they need that also that safe space. So, and they need to feel that they belong and not feel judged. They also need the same support that we are talking for children that they need. So we need to create that communities that for flourishing, those ecosystem that allows that flourishing, and that way hopefully keeps it spreading a little bit more.
I wanted to share just one more, just to add on to the conversation, so about how the platform could look like or how we're envisioning it in the moment. And this is quite complex. These are too many elements to try in an initial pilot, but it is one possible a vision of it. And a vision of it could be that we need networks to access those teachers through syndicates, association, governments, putting out a call for application of who wants to be an education change maker within their school, a selection before, not necessarily because we want to exclude people, but because it's part perhaps of one of those things that make you feel worth it and valued for the things that you're doing. We probably need to create some trainings and resources that are shared with the people that take part in the program. Definitely a community, an active management of a community, I think, is one of the core things, so that there's a follow-up process along the whole thing, and they feel that there's a space where they can come back to share their challenges, because things are not going to work out, and there's going to be lots of challenges, and not necessarily pedagogical, but about how to communicate with the families and how to share this with other groups of teachers and how to speak with the inspectors. And a lot of these things need to be dealt with. And then some of the aspirations of what will make this network amazing, it would be to have a network of mentors, for instance, people that are already in progressive learning spaces and can share some of their time to give some ideas to these people, or some spaces, some learning spaces that are open for visits and residencies, so that people can see firsthand how this actually works and takes back to their own schools. Recognition is one element that we put in there, and I know that in progressive education, rewards and punishments are things that are consciously not valued, and it makes all the sense. But to spread this sense of change and to make people feel that they are doing something really amazing and that they want to keep on going, perhaps something that could be part of the program, to recognize the work that those teachers are doing in their own learning spaces, either to create new ones or to transform the ones that they are part of. And we could have academic collaborators as well, maybe interested in impact measurements, in doing research about the activities that are done, the things that are easy to implement, or creating toolbox. Like, lots of different things can happen in here, I think, in this platform. So this is just a vision of how something like that could happen. And I think this question, I'm gonna close it, finish the slides with what role it could play. As just to clarify what we're aiming for, because as Gabriel mentioned, it's very important to have clarity on the goal. So we want to ensure that the learning revolution doesn't stop on a lucky few, and spread learning-centered education and youth empowerment for social and natural regeneration, creating this platform for support. And it's not a technological platform, but a support community for teams of education change makers in to transform each of these spaces little by little as a grassroots movement. And there are many possible roles and functions that people could take to co-create this, such as coordination, fundraising, mentoring, developing programs and resources, launch and selection of participants, community building, impact measurement, managing that community of mentors. Like, there's really lots of different options. So yeah, it feels like an area and a way of working where it would be possible to have people with strengths in different areas and that can come in from different angles to enable this movement to little by little affect more and more teachers, schools, and youth. So I will end over here to leave you with that form that is at the bottom of the screen, if you can copy across, Luz. So it's just a little form to show interest for this initiative in case you feel connected, you feel there's something that you would like to be part of, or simply you want to have a call with us to share some ideas about how we could go about it. We'll be looking forward to do that and start organizing. Very focused, very specific on what's the goal. I'll go back to, I think maybe the most important slide is this one. We want to create a platform to support teams of education change makers to develop experiments that lead to the transformation of the learning centers. I go to the last one just to say thank you very much.
Well, thank you both very much for doing this. And it's always a pleasure to hear what you're up to. And thank you for sending us updates. I know you send AERO updates, and we're always wondering kind of where you are and what you're doing. So it really helps to get those updates, you know, and you know, we love sharing them and we get some good feedback from them. And also, folks that are out there listening, we do have a little bit of time between our next session, which starts at 11:05 Eastern time, which I believe is about 15 minutes from now. So it's a little time to take a little break. You can stay in the room and chat. And just for another little piece of information, if you just kind of want to network with people and things like that, you can just come back into the main room. And we will keep the main room open for as long as the virtual sessions are going. And then anybody is free to network with anybody. Like if you want to set up your own kind of meeting and talk with somebody, obviously, you know, you can do that. A lot of you are on the Whova app, so that's a great way to network and connect with people. But we're going to kind of officially end now. And obviously, David and Luz, you're welcome to stay and join us for as many of the sessions as you can and chat. So, okay, I'm going to stop the recording.